Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for being here today, and welcome to the TUM Speaker Series. I'm Katarina, and I'm going to be your host tonight. Tonight, we're going to talk about the art of staying relevant and the future. I'm sorry, I'm going to start this one again. So, tonight we're going to talk about the art of staying relevant and Siemens' approach to the future people development in times of transformation. Our guest tonight has had quite an impressive career so far already, and is currently the Chief People and Sustainability Officer and member of the Managing Board at Siemens. We have today as a guest, Judith Wiese. Thank you very much. After her keynote and the discussion followed, we will have a Q&A session, ready for your questions. We have the QR code here, which you can scan and simply submit your question, and we will later read some out to you. Before that, though, I want to introduce Professor Dr. Winkelmann, Senior Vice President for International Alliance and Alumni at TUM, for some welcoming words. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to the TUM Speaker Series today, our exclusive forum for dialogue, inspiration, and the exchange of ideas. It's my great pleasure to introduce Judith Wiese, a distinguished leader and visionary in the fields of people management and sustainability. Born in Lüdenscheid in Germany, Judith has built an impressive career spanning multiple continents and industries, always combining strategic insight with a deep commitment to organizational development and responsible leadership. Since October 2020, Judith Wiese has served as the Chief People and Sustainability Officer, as well as a member of the Managing Board and Labor Director of Siemens. In this critical role, she champions the integration of sustainable business practices with a people-centric organizational culture, driving Siemens toward a future that is both innovative and societal responsible. Her commitment to fostering dialogue between industry, academia, and society at large embodies the spirit of responsible leadership. We are honored to have her here today and look forward to gaining insights from her vast experience in steering large organizations through complex challenges in a sustainable and human-focused way. Siemens' approach to people's development in times of transformation exemplifies the art of staying relevant in a rapidly evolving world, recognizing that technological innovation alone is not enough. Siemens places a strong emphasis on continuous learning, adaptability, and empowerment of its workforce. Today, Judith Wiese will explain Siemens' distinctive approach to people development and how HR is strategically integrated to drive transformation and foster a culture of continuous learning. But before I close, I want to take a moment to thank the incredible student team behind the TUM Speaker Series. This event would not be possible without your dedication, your professionalism, and your countless hours of volunteer work. Your commitment reflects the best of TUM, and we are proud of everything you make happen. So, to all of you here tonight, Thank you for being part of this evening. Your curiosity, your questions, and your presence here are what give this format its energy and purpose. With that, it's my pleasure to pass the spotlights to tonight's esteemed speaker. But before, we will see a movie. Enjoy the evening.
About this?
Something that can be done about this.
I went.
Census says 2030.
Well, let's make it 2030. Clock's ticking. Let's go. Let's go real and the digital world. Make big changes.
We need some music.
But can we do something about replacing these?
On it. This comes a digital twin of the factory. Then you optimize it. So you get a real one that produces batteries in record time. Here you go.
I'm happy. What about you?
Well, actually, can we do the city more?
Got some ideas?
Can you make them?
Oh, yeah. How about using data and AI to transform urban smart and more energy efficient? Even updated your suit.
Whoa, thanks.
What about
Get a digital twin to help design and build a real engine powertrain.
Please do not help him with that.
Wait. Who are you?
Siemens.
Is the mic on? No. Okay. Hey, hello everyone. Thank you for coming. I don't know where the camera is, probably somewhere up there. If you have dialed in for this session today, thank you for that. And thank you for the lovely introduction and the invitation. I'm really happy to be here. And even though the technology didn't work, maybe I can leave you with the fact that I work for one of the oldest startups in Germany. Siemens has been around for 177 years. And we have technology that transforms the everyday for everyone, and that's something I'm immensely proud of, and many of us who work for Siemens are immensely proud of, that we think that we can contribute to something meaningful through the very work that we do on a day-to-day basis. Now, the question is, how do you stay relevant as a company for 177 years and onwards? And I think the answer to that is there's things that we need to do as organizations, as companies to do that. And relevance then means competitiveness. But there is something about the people that make up an organization. And how do you stay relevant for a long career? And you will probably be working, depends on your choices, 40, 45, maybe 50 years. So how do you stay relevant for that long period of time? And by the way, does this technology work, or is this also not? Yeah, this works. Okay. So the question is, how do you do that? Yeah? How do you stay relevant for that long a period of time? And this is one of the things that gets me out of bed in the morning, yeah? Because I'm deeply convinced that behind every organization, behind every technology, behind every great product, there is the people who invent it, who deploy it. There's organizations that determine how well people play together. There's relationships that you forge. And at the end of the day, an organization is an energy system. And we need to sustain as individuals, but I think the energy that we contribute, that we gain, is also one of the big things that makes us successful going forward. And I think think it's not only a question of staying relevant for a long, long time. But I think one of the things that that has increasingly happened in the last few years is that change has become less evolutionary and much, much more disruptive. So there's some fundamental shifts that we see happening in the world that have an impact on how we live, how we work, and quite frankly, the operating model by which the world is operating out there, and what that does to us. And it's the speed by which that happens, it's the unpredictability and sometimes also the unprecedented by which this happens that actually take a huge toll on us, on companies, but of course also bring huge opportunities. In Siemens, we often talk about the big mega trends that have been out there for a long, long time, and to what extent they pose challenges for us, but also big, big opportunities. You know, if you're in the business of automating things, then quite honestly, demographics is also something that we can very positively contribute to. Because in many countries, we simply will not have the labor force in quantities and maybe in capabilities that are needed. We saw urbanization. If you're in the business of buildings, if you're in the business of public transport, you know, how can you make cities more livable? How do we contribute positively to that? Digitalization is what we do. Add AI into the picture. This is something that we want to take a big leadership role in industrial AI. We've been at this since the 1970s, but how do you marry that with generative AI, large language models, industrial foundational models? This is our business, and this is where we want to take a leadership role. This is where we think Europe can take a leadership role. And then there's climate change, of course, and we think that more than 90% of our business contributes to positive outcomes in that regard as well. So we make customers, we make economies more resilient, more competitive, but also more sustainable, because the minute you electrify, you digitalize, you automate, this also helps from a decarbonization, from an energy efficiency perspective, and from a resource efficiency perspective as well. So this is what we do. But why is that relevant from a people and organization perspective? And by the way, we've banned the word human resources, at least I have, and so we call ourselves people and organization rather than HR in Siemens, because I deeply think language matters. None of us want to be just human resources or human capital. I think we want to come to work as the people that we are, and then it's a question of which organizational levers do we pull to make sure that we become more competitive, more resilient as organizations and as people. And this is where we come in as P&O. Why? I'll give you a few statistics. Only 23% of leaders, according to Deloitte, are actually able to deal with disruptive change. That makes a hell of a lot of leaders who are not fit for the type and magnitude of change that we're currently dealing with. We see the life of big S&P 500 companies coming down significantly from 35 years just a few years ago to 20 now. So therefore, in that light, our 177 years are even more special. And we want to be out there for far more than another 20 years, to be very honest. And 2/3 of any change initiative that you drive in a company fails not because of the technology or because you haven't thought through processes very well, but simply because people don't adopt them. People are not on board with your change, either because they haven't understood it well, or they're afraid of the change, or they simply lack the capabilities. And so this is deeply our territory in P&O to actually be able to help with that. And so when we talk about transformation at Siemens, and we have a lot to do as well to make sure that we keep up with the dynamics of the external world, and that we really make sure the mega trends work for us rather than work against us. We talk about 3 things in terms of ambitions by which we can contribute. One is, we need leaders who transform. This is really important. We have 25,000 line managers, line leaders, people leaders in Siemens. They're a massive multiplier, good and bad. So this is enormously important. We talk about organizations who transform. So what are the levers that we need to pull? Structures, accountability, systems, incentives, capabilities, and the right leaders. And the last one is critically important, which is talking about skills for life. And so therefore, at the end of the day, most of what we're talking about is really about people in the change and taking people with us. And so we're investing a lot in terms of making sure that people are not only aware of what we're trying to achieve, but they really feel confident about the future and the capabilities that they bring. We often talk about relevance and also resilience, because that is a skill as well. And the good news is it's a learnable skill. So there's a lot that we need to do cognitively from a functional, technical perspective. But increasingly, I think it's important that we add foundational skills to the picture. What stresses us? What motivates us? What gives us energy that we can dial up and that we can leverage? Have we got learning strategies? So instead of only concentrating on what we need to learn, do we know how we learn? Do we have learning strategies? And you can imagine a company the size of Siemens with over 300,000 people that go from anything like welders who weld our high-speed trains through to the 1,500 AI experts that we have across the company and everything in between. We need to cater to very, very different profiles, qualification profiles. And the question of how much people have done in terms of formal learning or learning in the flow of work becomes really critically important to ensure that we understand learning is like going to the gym. You lose your muscles really quickly if you don't do that on a regular basis. So this is what we're trying to do. This is why we have made this a big topic across Siemens. And there's a real business case for this as well. The shelf life of knowledge has tanked. The closer you are to technology and IT, the shelf life of knowledge is probably less than 5 years these days. So by the time you come out of university, you can't just rest on your laurels. You need to keep topping things up. And as a company, we spend around about 440 million euros every year in terms of education and learning. We measure how we learn, what we learn, how much is being learned. And we're quite explicit about, what we deem strategic. And we said, we want everybody to have certain skills in digital and AI, in sustainability, and leadership is a priority for us as well. The foundational skills that I just mentioned, and critical thinking, learning strategies, resilience are some of those foundational skills. And then our various businesses define also what's critical. So in technical service, where people are out with our customers, making sure that big machines work, they've gone very much from an analog to a digital type of service. But then you also have in our software business an increasing need for cloud natives. And not all of our software people have started as cloud natives. So those would be examples of business critical skills. So some things we're quite explicit about that they are for everyone. And we want to make sure that people at least have a base camp level of knowledge about them. And then we look very, very deeply into business and functional skills as well to make sure that people have the chance to top up. And of course, the way people learn in businesses today has also changed. The way you learn at universities, I'm sure, has long changed as well. Because rarely do you go up and sign up for a 2-week course anymore. You kind of do learning, a lot of it online. You do it in your own time. You do it, as smaller nuggets rather than longer spells of training. So those are things that we are catering towards because we know it's a necessity. And we know that we want to invest in the people that we have and then maybe complement that with additional skills and capabilities that we need. But like I said, particularly in hot labor markets, in markets where demographic change hits, it is also a real business case to make sure that we invest in the people that we have rather than trying to find new ones in the market and not invest in those who are, into their career 30, 40, or maybe just 10 years. And of course, we have learned a lot about not doing just things by ourselves and in Siemens. The wonderful notion of the ecosystem, I'm sure you've come across in many ways. For us as Siemens, innovation ecosystems are very important. A lot of why Germany is still very important for us is the good infrastructure that we have from an innovation perspective. Another big plus is that we have highly skilled, highly educated people coming out of German universities like yourself. And I think here again, it is really important that we make sure that we marry theoretical knowledge with things that are practically important and that really give a competitive advantage to companies, but also to the nation. So therefore, I think things like the additive manufacturing center that we have here as one of 5 in Germany is critically important. So Germany declared additive manufacturing as one of the nationally important key technologies, and they found 5 centers, TUM and Munich being one, to make sure that there is a real nexus between the people like yourselves who go through the education system and the technology and bring that together. Because again, this technology will never come to fruition if we don't have the right people alongside it who will help us develop this further. So Bavaria Makes is a great example of that, as much as things like the Hyperloop are. So it's a perfect example of how we live ecosystems. And ecosystems, of course, are becoming increasingly important also as we go to market. We do many things through partners. We have more and more customers who are both customers and suppliers. And so there's a really rich ecosystem in many ways, by the definition of the word, that's important for us. And interestingly enough, again, education, learning, and staying relevant is a big part of what they want from us today as well. A lot of customers who invest in our technology say, you know, how do I get my people to adopt this really quickly so that I can really benefit from your technology and that I get productive as quickly as possible? And because our factories are our business card in many regards, because we apply our own technology in our own manufacturing. You know, this is something that, again, we can showcase to customers really well, and we can show them what we do internally in terms of training people, upskilling people, and then adopt that for them as well. For our customers as well, we have sustainability ambitions. And a lot of our Scope 3, you know, if you take the full value chain, of course, is the work with our suppliers. So we do a lot also in terms of awareness, learning, when it comes to, you know, where on earth do I start if I want to decarbonize my business? You know, what are some of the things that I could do? And here we also help. And then we do this also for communities, and not only the communities that we operate in, but really also from a wider perspective. We said we want to touch at least 3 million people by 2030 with things that are relevant learning opportunities for people out there. And whether that comes with, you know, some of our digital twin software that we give certification around, or like I said, opportunities in the sustainability space, where people can either get micro credentials from us in that area, in that arena, or where in countries like China, like India, in the US, we really invest also in bridging people who have maybe not reached great qualifications yet after school into jobs, and then qualify them when they come to Siemens. And again, because we believe this is truly an ecosystem play, it makes business sense. It's a great thing to do, it's an engaging thing to do, but it also makes business sense that we have ecosystems that really fuel each other rather than drag each other down in any way. So therefore, we think that we can create value together where that really matters, and we do that gladly, and we've been doing this for a long, long time. So my last slide, and then we'll go into discussion. So lead the change you want to see. When you read all the literature about what it is that people want these days, particularly people in the knowledge space, there's typically 3 or 4 things that come back. People say, let me be in the driver's seat of my life. Let me make decisions that are good for me. And those are things like hybrid work. Can I determine my place of work? Can I determine my hours of work as much as possible? But it's also what kind of decisions can I make at work? Do I really feel that you empower me to take the decisions that you hired me for? Are you giving me the information? Are you giving me the resources alongside that? I think that's super important. People often say, I want to go to a place of work where I feel that I'm contributing to something meaningful, something that's bigger than myself. And so I think this is also, a choice that you will make. What kind of company do you work for? What fits with your purpose? What gives you a sense of meaning? And then people just want to belong, and that's very often the team that they work with. I often say, whether people feel that they belong, is down to the team they hopefully every now and then physically go to lunch with. And the last thing that people want is development that keeps them relevant. And again, I think this is about choices that you make in terms of going to the gym for the rest of your life, into the mind gym for the rest of your life, and making sure that you stay relevant, whatever that is and whatever that means to you, and making sure that you find a surrounding and a support infrastructure that helps you make the right choices, that points you in the right direction of what does it really mean to stay relevant for a long, long career. And with that, I would say I'll shut up and give the floor to you, and we'll talk about questions you might have, right?
Thank you very much for your keynote. You've touched upon some topics that we're also going to dive into now as well. So you've had a very impressive career, and you've been recently also named under the top 40 HR minds by Personalmagazin. You as CPSO, you have a big responsibility, and you wear 2 hats at once. How is it? Where are the advantages to wear the 2 hats in one role? And where do you see the connection between the people strategy on the one side and the sustainability on the other?
Yeah, I get that question every now and then, and I think they perfectly fit. And if you think about how the world out there often refers to these areas, they talk about environment, social, and governance, right? Environment, I have environmental protection reporting to me. I've got the sustainability team reporting to me. A lot of what is social is effectively what I do from a people and organization and a learning perspective. We have a social strategy at Siemens. That area reports to me as well. And then, of course, there are areas in good governance that also, I think, fall in my remit, also in other people's remit. But I think there's a real nexus here. And at the end of the day, if we talk about a healthy planet, we talk about a healthy planet so that people can live on the planet, because the planet is going to survive fine without us, quite frankly. Yeah? And they have a slightly different calculation of time and eons than we do in terms of generations. And so for me, it's something that I'm really proud of. And if I said something about finding meaning in work, to be doing that for and with people, to be doing that in the space of sustainability is just something that really gets me out of bed nicely, at least on most mornings. Yeah.
Given the connection we've just talked about with the people strategy and sustainability, Siemens is one of the leading engineering companies, as you said, 177 years. That's quite a long time, with around 320,000 employees worldwide. From your perspective, how important is human capital on the one side for long-term success of such a tech-driven company? And just do they go hand in hand, or is it more like one without the others? What drives more the success of such a company?
Yeah, I mean, I think I said it before. I mean, technology doesn't exist out of thin air. Yeah, technology exists because there's people behind them inventing it, and in this day and age, it's less and less a singular person. It's about how you actually make sure that people come together and work on things in terms of innovation. So I think it is very much about individuals, how they come together as teams, how they come together as ecosystems, because I think for a long, long time, people thought that maybe a company should try and do it all by themselves. But we know that from a speed perspective, in terms of complementary capabilities, it's so much better to do this open, open in terms of open innovation. So I think, therefore, it brings you back to people, to capabilities, and how people come together, how people collaborate. And the same is true for go-to-market. Yeah? So it's one thing to invent technology. You want to commercialize on it. You want to sell it. You want to find your customers. And that has all to do with, again, how you orchestrate that. And so, therefore, I think people are immensely important. And I think I said at the beginning, 67% of, so 2/3 of change initiatives fail, not because you hadn't done the rational things, it's because you haven't got the people with you. So I think it points you back time and again to that, and that's why leadership is such an important function.
Definitely. So with the human capital as well, also the happiness of all the employees comes in hand. And as the global workforce you have at Siemens with different generations and varying cultures, you also come different attitudes towards work. And how does the company support and promote work-life balance across all levels of the organization?
Yeah, I think that actually generations are different, but they're more similar than we think. Yeah, and some of the foundational things around motivation that I talked about, I think they are actually more spanning than not between generations. I think there's variances, but I think it's not that fundamentally different. So I think people want to have flexibility around when they work, how much they work, where they work. They want to be given jobs in which they are really able to take decisions rather than having to go up the chain of command, come down the chain of command, is important. If you go to areas like software developers, of which we have many thousands, if you don't work on stuff that is out there, you're going to be irrelevant within the span of years. You know? So I think it's also therefore important that we make sure that we think of the place of work as something where people give something, but they get something at the very same time. Because this keeps people relevant, but it also keeps us relevant as a business, as an organization. And AI adoption and adoption rate is just the latest example of that. So therefore, I think all of that comes together in the very same topics again and again. Yeah?
There has been a study in Iceland regarding a 4-day week they had a pilot project from 2015 to 2019, which had quite positive results. Many leaders see this pilot project as critical. Could you maybe enlighten us what, in your opinion, are the advantages of a 5-day week in comparison to a 4-day week?
Yeah, I think you can look at this in many different ways. If I look at the German economy, or most economies around the world, but the German one in particular, if we already have a really high proportion of people working part-time, so macroeconomically, it's a disaster for an economy like ours, if there's even more people deciding to work less. Yeah, because put in the demographic changes, it's just not a good recipe for economic prosperity and growth. It's going to mean that we're going to go backwards rather than forwards. I do think, however, that it's about then making sure people have choices. So if we do want to give people the opportunity at least to have some freedom around exactly when, exactly from where, I think anything can go, and the people who are craving a 4-day work week would maybe also be happy with a 5-day work week, depending on the degrees of freedom they get. there's also other studies, there's studies that say a 4-day work week is the holy grail. There are studies who tell you the opposite. Then I think it also depends on the sector, because some work you can actually also condense into 4 days. If you are running a hospital, that's not such a great idea. Again, I think there's also context that we need to take into consideration. But for me, it's all about making sure that we give people as many choices as we can, be really clear about the boundaries there are and why there are boundaries, and quite honestly, let's see how that works for people. And maybe one general comment. I am someone who deeply believes that people should be treated as adults. When we're no longer parent-child, this is not patriarchy, and people need to be able to make choices in their lives. But many people love to go to work. It's also part of our lives. If work wasn't part of my life, I would be in trouble because I spent quite a bit of time doing my work. But it's also a source of our identity. It's a source of energy. It's hopefully it's something that gives you things as much as it absorbs on certain days. And I think those are the conversations we need to have with people, and within that, allow them to make choices.
Well, I think you also said in your keynote that you work for skills for life, and that's about relevance and resilience. Us students, we're in our studies or going into the workforce soon. What are the things that we can work on, or that you see with people coming new into the company, where you think, hey, this is really great, or what can we work on to improve our entrance into the workforce?
So I always find it very hard to give generic advice, but there are a few universal truths, I think. And I come back to what I've said about foundational skills. I always quote my children, who I dragged around the world and across 4 different school systems. They would go back to the British system in a heartbeat because they learned how to learn. They learned skills that were not just cognitive, but they learned how to place a good argument, creativity, sports. They had themes they worked around that spanned different subjects. And I think those things, I think, have equipped them for life in a different way than if you just are hit from the front with content that needs to be reproduced. But at the same time, I think it's really important that you do have an anchor in a field of expertise as well. We often talk about the T-shape or the pie-shaped career, where you are anchored in something that you're really good at, that you really love, that you have deep capabilities in. But I think more and more, you want people to have a good view of value streams, thinking end-to-end, thinking beyond their silo, because the world's become so complex and dynamic, and how you do business well as well. So you want people with a certain level of perspective, who kind of keep the view from the balcony as well.
Well, we have some rapid-fire questions for you now. So these are just, don't overthink it, just go into them. They're very short answered. What's the favorite country you've lived in?
I would say, as a family, Austria.
What's your best stress outlet?
My best?
Stress outlet.
Oh, I walk my dog.
The biggest surprise of your career?
I think, quite frankly, getting a phone call from Siemens to be asked whether I want to be a board member. I mean, I always think, if somebody had asked me that 20 years ago, I would have never thought that possible. So here I am.
If you had to start university again, what would you study? Organizational
psychology.
If you have a work call at home, in pajama bottoms, yes or no?
If I had a what?
If you have a work call in home office.
Yeah.
Do you wear a suit at the top and PJ bottoms, or suit all the way?
No, I actually also work with a sports shirt up front and a sports shorts down there. Depends a little bit on the car, but no, I'm quite happy with going casual.
What animal describes Siemens best?
Oh, I think that's a really good question. I think in a way we are a chameleon because otherwise we wouldn't have been here for 177 years. And maybe that is actually a good way, because there's some things that are deeply Siemens for 177 years, a deep engineering culture, a pride in technology that hasn't changed. But I think we've been able to change with the environment. So we have been able to also adapt in terms of color and fit into the environment that we are in.
One word colleagues would use to describe you.
An extroverted thinker, which is a pain for all the introverts and a happy party for all the other extroverted thinkers.
Which leadership value matters most to you?
So I live by 3 values that are important for me in life and in leadership, and it's humanity, it's integrity, and it's growth. Because I deeply believe in growth. I deeply believe in a growth mindset that we live at Siemens as well. I think the question of what is possible and believing that most things are possible if you apply yourself is actually hugely liberating and very energizing. So that's what I try to live by on most days.
If today were your last day at Siemens, what would you miss the most?
The people. Yeah.
Fair. So now we're going to turn to the audience for the Q&A session. My colleagues are going to put them onto the board here, and then we can see them. Hopefully soon. There we go. Being strategic or following opportunities? Looking back at your career, what were the key drivers to your success that you could influence? In contrast, what role did luck play? Right time, right place? How can we try to be more lucky from the start?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think you can post-rationalize any CV at any point in time. So I could tell you the wonderful story of how I got here, and I could tell you a very different story of how I got here. I think a lot of it is about being clear on certain things that are important for you. And I'll give you an example. So I did one of these classic high school years in America when I was 16. But that was the day that I decided that I would never just stay in Germany for the rest of my life. So it was very intentional, very, very intentional and strategic, call it strategic, that I had an international career. But then I think there's also truth in career very often is a question of visibility and opportunity. So, do you get noticed? And, and when an opportunity comes your way, are you
taking it up?
Are you taking it? And I think I had a lot of great opportunities, and because I get excited by opportunities, I've said yes probably more times than my family would have wanted to. No?
As a student looking to grow into a leadership role, what practical steps would you recommend to build strong leadership skills early on? And for you personally, what experience most shaped your leadership style?
So I think there's a few things that I would like to get out of the way. I think that leadership is largely a choice. Leadership is where you choose to apply yourself. It is not so much a box in an org chart and how many people report to you. So I think that's the first thing. I think that you can exercise leadership at any time in your life. So I think the happy people and the very effective people are the ones that discover early on and continue to intentionally discover what's really important for them and find their voice around that. Because I think that will inevitably make you most impactful and most happy. Yeah, because you're doing things that you love and you're going to be likely good at them as well. I think that there is also a typical maturity curve that people go through in life. And very often we start out with thinking we have to prove ourselves. And when you're out there trying to prove yourself, then you're actually not that open to feedback that might be menacing. You may try to hide things that aren't going so well rather than embracing them. And I think there comes a point in time where you have to make a decision in life whether you want to continue to do this or whether you simply say, wow, what can we do? How can we do it? What's going well? What's not going well? And how do you improve? And I think that's what, again, I understand by and live by in terms of growth and growth mindset. And that is just very liberating. And again, in a complex world like today, most things you can't solve by yourself as a leader anyway. So I think it's about enlisting people at the right point in time, enlisting diverse perspectives, making sure that you create a climate by which people tell you the good but also the ugly. And I think it's particularly cultures that foster that kind of environment that come faster and better through difficult times as well. And I sometimes say, who would have 6 years ago predicted any of what happened in the last 5? So I think it's not only the question of how rapid things change, but there's also things we've never experienced before. So I think as a leader, you want to enlist different voices to get to much better outcomes and much better decisions in times that are unprecedented. And I think the more you embrace that, the earlier on you embrace that, that goes a long way.
So on to the next question. How are you working to keep sustainability relevant and prioritized? And how is Siemens monetarily giving support to these programs and initiatives and making sure they're not lost to budget cuts?
Yeah, that's a question that I am very happy to answer, because I think sustainability, at the end of the day, is most effective if it's part of who you are and part of what you do. And in Siemens, more than 90% of our portfolio actually has sustainable outcomes. It depends a little bit on how customers choose to use our technology, but if you board one of our trains, you've chosen a low carbon emission way of transport. If you automate your buildings, the likelihood that you're going to reduce the energy consumption of that building by 20, 30 or more % is pretty high. If you choose to take one of our digital twins to design a product, you can only optimize it for cost and quality, but you can also optimize it for cost, quality, and things like carbon features, recyclability, etc., etc. So I think for us, it's really important that this is not a side hobby that we have, like a corporate social responsibility gig. It is really part of who we are and what we make decisions by. And so therefore, we are in the lovely position that there's actually no contradiction. There are some things that are hard to do and harder to do in sustainability these days. Nobody can predict the price of green steel these days. So we need to do a little bit of hand-holding. When do we put certain product features in or certain materials into our products at what price point? So there are business decisions and judgments that we make around these things as well. But we typically try and find the sweet spot where this is not, are we sustainable or are we profitable? We're trying to find the sweet spot between those two things. And that suits us well. And we've just launched the next kind of evolution of our degree framework, which is our expression of environment, social, and governance, with ambition levels that we have in all of these dimensions, because it's just a space that is rapidly evolving, and we wanted to make sure that we challenge ourselves to keep our ambition levels high, and that. Again, that is well understood, well embraced internally, and people are proud of the fact that we have technology with purpose. And so I think it's a nice combination at Siemens.
We have time for one final Q&A question. So, do you think industry should get more involved in universities, because changes in education system in universities are very slow compared to market and environment?
Well, this is this implicit feedback for the TUM? No, but I think I've had this example of Bavaria Makes, where again I think it's in the interest of universities and companies to make sure that we find a good sweet spot between technology that is important, for a company like Siemens, but also for a nation like Germany, and the education system. Germany is actually celebrated in most other parts of the world for its apprenticeship system, the dual study programs, because it keeps, it keeps theory and practice really well connected. And I think one of the things that I want to explore harder going forward is how can we actually leverage education institutions not just to front load careers, because we go to school and then we do apprenticeship or we go to uni, and then what? Yeah? If we're really serious about lifelong learning, what other than maybe an MBA might come, in the collaboration with universities and educational institutions, where we can actually forge partnerships in a way that we haven't done in the past.
So thank you very much for all your insights. We have one final question for you. What is the most impactful moment in your career that you can think of in the past, let's say, 10 years, or what is your favorite memory? We say you're always happy to look back to that day.
So but that's more than 10 years ago. I always think of my great aunt. My great aunt grew up in what is today Poland, and she became a nurse. She did a nurse education in Gdansk at the time. She was born in 1907, and she was a nurse on a motorcycle, serving her clients. And to me, she was a woman that personified very early on service. Yeah, so she had something that gave her purpose, but she was also a very independent woman. And so I love thinking of her. I have very fond memories of her, and so she died by now a long time ago. I was in the UK when she did. That was in the late 90s, but she stayed with me always.
So your own personal superwoman.
She is. She was. She is. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for listening tonight. Thank you also very much for everybody that's watching on the live stream, I guess. And this was our last semester for this event, last event for this semester, other way around. And we're very happy to welcome you back next semester with future events. We have a couple good ones lined up. And I just want to give a good round of applause. And feel free to scan the QR code to look if there is any important job openings at Siemens or just general career advice that you want to get. And feel free to join us for the after event if you have a ticket at the Immerthalle. And with that, I think that's a wrap. Thank you very much.